Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com. If you've ever read the descriptive area describing my channel, not the descriptive areas in my videos, although you should read those, but I'm talking about the description area that describes my channel, you will see that I've indicated that this is a channel primarily dedicated to the art and the beauty of historic tarot decks and how to read them. However, I also share that on occasion I will use other forms of divination on this channel. Now, when I see the word or think of the word divination, I think that's an antiquated word. For me, I see divination not as foretelling the future or predicting the future, but as a method of forcing ourselves to see things with a different light, something you might not have thought of. I use the example when I lose an object, or when we all collectively lose objects. What do? We tend to go back to the last place we saw it, and we look there 1,000 times, right? Or the last place we remember having it. And we look there over and over and over and over, and it's not there. So you get the same results, which is a big void. So sometimes, when you redirect your thinking, you'll get a message, or you'll get an idea to look in a different spot. And, today I'm going to use a different method other than tarot, because I think it's probably a really good way to get to get a solid non-subjective answer in Bibliomancy. And what am I using for the book? I'm using the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, this book also contains the Articles of Confederation, the Bill of Rights and Amendments. But I think I'm just going to focus on the Constitution for the information, so I'm going to start it on page 37 and it ends on page 99. So the problem is, I don't know how to do this really. I'm going to make it up as we go along. I only have 3 dice. These were my great-grandmother's dice. She was a fortune teller, okay? And she had in her repertoire, she used Spanish tarot, which is, I guess, a regular Spanish deck, like the Spanish decks are different than the modern day French decks that we all have. She also used tea leaves. She read, she interpreted a teacup with tea leaves, and she also used dice. And she probably did any number of things. Now, why did she have this profession? Because she was a marginalized person, And if you were proficient in fortune telling, you always had money in your pocket, So I don't know for a fact that that's it. I think she had other jobs, I think she worked in other capacities. But this was always something, from what I have gathered from trying to understand and connect to her, that this was additional money in her pocket. And I don't know what other things she did. I certainly don't know if she ever, used bibliomancy or not. But I know she used 3 dice, which is the number of dice you use when you, I think it's I forgot to look it up before. I never can remember how to say it right. But when you divine by dice, it's kind of like astrologamancy or something like that. Astrologamancy. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. But to properly do it, you use 3 dice. Now, I had originally thought that her dice were ivory because they're old. This would have been going back 100 years. However, I do think that it's not ivory. What I think these are is when they just started using that new kind of plastic. I forget what it's called. And a lot of jewelry was made out of plastic. It did yellow, however. It did yellow like ivory would. But it didn't crack like ivory cracks. I don't see any cracks. like ivory cracks, right? So if this was genuine ivory, I think it would have cracked. So this is a particular kind of plastic, I think, when they first started coming out with it. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. So, of course, when we roll 3 dice, the highest number that we can get would be like 18, right? Now, the Constitution doesn't even begin on 18. It begins on 37. So I'm going to have to come up with something, and I'll be right back to explain it. But I'm going to have to come up with a way to roll the dice and times it by something, so I at least get a minimum of 30. See, how will that work? A minimum of 37 and a maximum of 99. Too bad I'm not a mathematician. I should call my son, but he's a math teacher, so he's at school, so I can't really call him. Let me try to come up with something. I'll be right back. You know what? I can't figure it out. I'd like to have it so that the dice will include all the pages, which I just can't do. Another thing I've learned is that I just realized that I can't reproduce this book on video without express written permission of the publisher, except in cases of brief excerpts in critical review and articles. So I can't really show the book. However, it's the Constitution of the United States. I mean, these are words that are basically written in stone since the beginning of our country. So I don't think I'll get in trouble if I read from the book, right? Now, since I can't figure out how to use my great-grandmother's dice, maybe I'll start a little thing whereby every day I read a few pages of the U.S. Constitution. Not everybody's got a copy. The first section for me to read is only 4 pages. Won't take that long. Probably wrap this up in 15 or 20 minutes. We'll see how this goes. And if you guys, particularly the American ones, or those of you who are not, citizens of the United States, who are interested in seeing what it was about, or what it might, it wasn't what I intended to do, but maybe it's not a bad thing. It could be a supplemental kind of video that I put on at night or something like that. So it's written in Congress, July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth a separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain, who was, of course, the one in charge at that time, is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over the states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused to assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation into the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. Inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance. Sound familiar? With his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of land. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount of payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any regimes, I'm not going to say the word, which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us all in cases whatsoever. To legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. I read that poorly. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy. I have to look that up. I apologize. I don't know it. Cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. I apologize for mispronouncing some of these words. I don't see them, that often. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, unfortunate reference, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attention to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connection and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. Enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought, to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and sacred honor. Now that's the end of that, and we have the signatories, which I'll read. Button Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, George Walton, William Hooper, Joseph Hughes, John Penn, Edward Rutledge, Thomas Hayward Jr., Thomas Lunch Jr., Arthur Middleton, John Hancock, Samuel Chase, William Paca, Thomas Stone, Charles Carroll of Carrollton, George Wythe, Richard Henry Lee, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Nelson Jr., Francis Lightfoot Lee, Carter Braxton, Robert Morris, Benjamin Rush, Benjamin Franklin, John Morton, George Clymer, James Smith, George Taylor, James Wilson, George Ross, Caesar Rodney, George Reed, Thomas McCain, William Floyd, Philip Livingston, Francis Lewis, Lewis Morris, Richard Stockton, John Witherspoon, Francis Hopkinson. I think Stockton and Witherspoon were both from New Jersey. John Hart, Abraham Clark, Josiah Bartlett, William Whipple, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Robert Treat Payne, Elbridge Gerry, Stephen Hopkins, William Ellery, Roger Sherman, Samuel Huntington, William Williams, Oliver Wolcott, and Matthew Thornton. So that's that. I think I'm going to read a little bit every day, and I'm going to put these in the bonus areas of some of my videos. Surely I can't get in trouble for reading the Declaration of Independence, or the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America, or the amendments, or the articles. How can I get in trouble for doing that? Is it illegal? I don't think so. But I still think I have to keep this on the down low, because I can't remind people of their rights. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting, and I hope you will take a look at future descriptive areas. Some of my videos will be this. It's very brief, not a whole lot of words. I could probably do it in several days' time, but it's an interesting thing for me. It's an interesting exercise in this period of time. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be brave, and be kind.